So before we get to the four parshas, we have this week's parsha. This week's parsha, of course, Parshas Yisro. Parshas Yisro is on page 294 in the Chumash, and this parsha really describes for us the giving of the Torah. Before we get to the giving of the Torah, there is a interlude. This is chapter 18 from the book of Shemot. It talks about the person for who this parsha is named, Yitro, Jethro, the father-in-law of Moshe. The Torah tells us how Moshe, we remember back to Parshas Shemos, it was a number of weeks ago. Moshe is on the run from Paro. We're on page 394. Moshe is on the run from Paro. He has killed one of Paro's officers who has been abusing Jewish people. And Moshe flees to the land of Midian. He meets a person there by the name of Yisro. He saves Yisro's daughters from being attacked by a well. Yisro advises his daughters, why don't you bring him home? Maybe he might be a prospective chassan for one of you. And turns out he marries one of Yisro's daughters by the name of Tzipora. Moshe leaves the land of Midian with his wife and child. As far as we know, the second son, who is only named here in Parshas Yisro, not named before in Parshas Shemos. Moshe leaves the land of Midian with his wife and children, and then we start Parshas Yisro, and Moshe's wife and children are not with him anymore. And the Midrash tells us that when Moshe was on the way to Egypt, the Torah tells us how he had met his brother Aharon, had come out from Egypt to meet Moshe, and Aharon advised Moshe that perhaps this is not the time to bring your wife and children with you to Egypt, because there's slavery going on. It's not necessarily an environment in which you want to bring new people. So Moshe thought that was a pretty good idea, and he eventually sends his wife and children back. There's even an opinion in the Midrash that Moshe himself, after making his first appearance to Paro at the end of Parshas Shemos, that Moshe himself goes back to Midian for a period of time, for a number of months before coming back to Egypt to continue his process of leading the Jewish people. So at this point, Moshe's family is in Midian, and the parsha opens up, Vayishma. Yisro heard. Rashi tells us, what did Yisro hear? What news did he hear? He heard about the Exodus. He heard about specifically about the splitting of the sea and the war with Amalek. And this has convinced him it's time to come and join the Jewish people. There's a dispute about when he actually came. Did he come before the giving of the Torah? Did he come shortly after the giving of the Torah? But in either case, he came while the Jewish people were encamped at Sinai. Yisro comes out to the desert with Tzipora and Moshe's two sons, Gershom and Eliezer, and Moshe greets him, invites him into the camp. Yisro converts formally to Judaism, and Yisro then advises Moshe about how to set up a legal system, to set up a system of higher courts, lower courts, ultimately under Moshe. This is not really supposed to function as an appellate system, but more of a system that you go to the lower courts if they can't help you, can't explain to you what to do, then you go to a higher level of court, but not so much as an appellate system, but this is a system of hierarchy in which you have the lower court. If they can handle your problem, let them do that. If they don't know what to do, they'll send it up to higher levels. And this is really what all of chapter 18 is based on, Yisro coming and joining the Jewish people. And after we finish with this portion, we then start on page 400, the story of the giving of the Torah. And one of the concepts, and the Torah starts out, and this whole parsha is named after Yisro, after Jethro coming and converting to Judaism, is really to put the whole idea of the giving of the Torah into focus, is that you see an idea of a person making a choice to join the Jewish people. You see the idea of Yisro, and one of the things which Yisro even does is Yisro exclaims, Baruch Hashem, he blesses Hashem. We get this expression Baruch Hashem from Yisro, and earlier the Torah said from Eliezer, from Abraham's servant Eliezer. Also, it has the statement of Baruch Hashem, and this recognition of the connection to Hashem that can be found by all people, and that is now being joined to the Jewish people. That's one of the names that Yisro has. One of his, our sages tell us he has 7 names. One of his names is Yisro because he added a portion to the Torah. He gives this advice and he adds himself onto the Jewish people.
Is that where Baruch Hashem, when everybody says Baruch Hashem, is that the original source
this
of it?
comes, the original source that we find in the Torah is going to be from Eliezer in Parshas Yisro and from Yisro here in this week's Parsha. This also is where we learn out the idea of Birchas Hagomel, of blessing Hashem, thanking Hashem for doing kindnesses to people. A person who's been in a difficult situation, a person who's been imprisoned, a person who's been sick, a person who's been having to travel over the desert, travel over the seas, in dangerous situations. They'll say a blessing, thank you Hashem for taking me out of this situation. We also see this from Yisro, that Yisro, after hearing of the Jewish people and their travels through the desert, which included all of these various elements, they came out of the slavery from Egypt, and so on. They come through this whole process of Exodus, and Yisro's response is, thank you Hashem for doing these miracles. We see from here sources for this idea of thank Hashem for miracles, also idea of blessing Hashem for a place that you encounter, Haroa Makom Shenasu Nisim Yisrael. You see a place where miracles happen to the Jewish people. We thank you Hashem for doing a miracle for the Jewish people in this place. And that's a lesson that we learned from Yisro. And there's the idea of Yisro is the idea of addition, of adding on something. And there's a idea what Yisro ultimately adds on. And we have the second half of the Yisro story, this idea of Yisro setting up a judicial system for the Jewish people. Ultimately, Yisro says, of course, it has to be approved by Hashem. Moshe then asks Hashem, is this something to do? And Hashem tells him it is. But this idea coming from Yisro, added a portion to the Torah. His name, one medrash says his name originally was Yeser or Jether, and then he now has the extra vav added to his name because he added a portion to the Torah with this suggestion, with this idea. This part of the story definitely happened after the giving of the Torah. Rashi explains whether or not Yisro joined the Jewish people before or after giving of the Torah is debatable. The Talmud records a debate about this question. But certainly the part when Yisro is now giving Moshe advice about setting up a judicial system, that's way after Matan Torah. That's after the 40 days on the mountain. It's after the golden calf. It's after all these, almost the rest of the book of Shemot. Already you're getting into Parshas Vayakhel by the time where this story would have chronologically fit. But it's put over here again. This is supposed to teach us a lesson about how to approach the Torah and how to approach getting ready and getting in the spirit of talking about the giving of the Torah. Then we have chapters 19 and 20. Chapters 19 and 20 are the story of the giving of the Torah. This is the Torah reading for the first day of Shavuot, the holiday of the Zman Matan Torah, the time of the giving of the Torah. And this story culminates with the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments are chapter 20, verses 1 through 14 in this numbering. And it tells us, go through what the 10 Commandments are. First commandment is stated with the phrase Anochi Hashem Elokech. I am Hashem. Hashem reveals himself to the Jewish people, and he tells us, I am Hashem who has taken you out of the land of Egypt. And commentaries discuss what exactly does it mean, Asher Hotzeiticha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. Hashem, that's not the first thing that Hashem did. Why doesn't it say, Anochi Hashem Elokecha Borei Olam? I created the world. Book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1. We have plenty of things which Hashem does. I'm Hashem who took Abraham out of the Ur Kasdim. Why do we start with Hashem takes us out of the land of Egypt from the house of slavery? And the reason for that is that that's one explanation. This is the something the Jewish people could relate to. The Jewish people at that time saw the miracles of the Exodus. They related to this. Hashem saying, you know what happened there? That was me. I did that. Hashem is telling the Jewish people. And another explanation that Rashi quotes is that the Exodus from Egypt is a reason why we became Hashem's nation, by Hashem performing this act of kindness to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. And another explanation, the concept of the Exodus is a concept we talk about Hashem expressing himself, so to speak, as a warrior on behalf of the Jewish people. He said in the Shiur Parshas Yisro, we talk about Hashem as being Hashem Ish Melchama. Hashem is a man of war. Hashem is fighting against the enemies of the Jewish people. And here you have now, 3 months later, a little bit less than that, the Jewish people are coming to receive the Torah, and Hashem is, appearing to them, so to speak, sort of as a wise teacher, telling the Jewish people what to do. And Hashem is saying, this is all part of who I am. This isn't something different. The Torah, the mitzvot that I'm telling you now is not different than the being saved from Egypt. That's all part of who I am. And this mitzvah, according to the Rambam, this is the first mitzvah which the Rambam recounts in his magnum opus, his Mishnah Torah, recounting of the Torah. The very first mitzvah that he records is the mitzvah which he says derived from this verse, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, to know that Hashem is one. I am Hashem, there is no other besides me. It's another interesting point. There's a midrash that identifies that the word Anochi is not Hebrew. The word Anochi is Egyptian. Word. It's the Hebrew form of the pure Hebrew form of the word I is ani. That Anochi is it says Belashon Mitzvahs in the Egyptian language for expressing I. Why does the Aseres Hadibros, the 10 Commandments, begin Hashem is identifying himself as Anochi? So one answer that said is that Hashem is saying, I am Hashem, there's only one Hashem, and that applies in Hebrew, and it applies in Egyptian, and it applies in English, and it applies in whatever language there is, that I am Hashem. Second commandment, Lo yiyah lecha Elokim achiv.
Can I ask you a question quickly? The line before the beginning, the first commandment, וידבר אלוקים את כל הדברים האלה לאמור. Why we need it for? It's part of the first commandment. It's different. It's a statement.
The Torah beforehand had told us the whole get sort of complicated reading the verses, but that Hashem had told Moshe that even Moshe is not supposed to be standing on the mountain during the giving of the Torah. That it needs to be clear that these Aseres Hadibros, these commandments, are being heard from Hashem Himself. There is no one else who's saying them. These, at least the first 2 commandments, the Jewish people heard and understood and related to those commandments directly being transmitted from Hashem. In fact, the Midrash states when it says Vayidaber Elokim et kol hadvarim ha'el, Hashem spoke all of these words. That's chapter 20, verse 1. That our sages derive from there. That Hashem said all of the 10 commandments in one utterance, which is we can't even imagine how that would be. All the 10 commandments at once, and what this accomplished, Jews didn't necessarily understand. That Hashem then explains to them the first 2 commandments. After which the Jews say, we can't take any more of this explanation directly from Hashem. Let Moshe speak to us on behalf of Hashem, and Moshe, be the one who will relay these explanations. But to hear the whole thing from Hashem is an important explanation. That this is really on more of a
why. So you're right.
Mystical level to understand that the whole Torah, all the words of Torah that we speak, Hashem speaks them. It says lemor. Lemor means to say to others. And there's an idea which the Talmud expresses that whenever a Jewish person studies Torah, it's as if Hashem is studying that portion of Torah with him. That Hashem is listening to him study Torah. The angels are listening to him study Torah. And Hashem is repeating those portions with him. And what he's saying, ultimately, the idea that what we're saying, what we're reading the Torah, is not just a human activity. It's an act of connecting with Hashem. That when we are reading these words, we're not just involved in our own intellectual exercise, but we're involved in something that's connecting to Hashem. And so to speak, that Hashem is connecting to us, and Hashem cares about what it is we're doing in studying the Torah. And that starting off our relationship with the Torah being hearing all these mitzvot directly from Hashem. We couldn't understand it. Nobody can understand why does Hashem do this. So one idea that is Hashem did this so that we have some sort of a frame of reference to understand what is this all about. That on some level we can look back at the Torah and say, what I'm studying today, this isn't just something that we came up with now. It isn't just something that Moshe made up or chas v'shalom or something like that. But it is something that's real and that came from Hashem. And we might not be able to understand it directly from Hashem. We need to compartmentalize it and to understand it and to draw out each idea and with ways of parables and with ways of just focus maybe on one point or 2 points or something. You can't approach the whole thing at once, maybe, and maybe we can't even approach the full meaning and majesty of what the Torah is about. And on one level, the Rav Saadia Gaon taught that all of 613 commandments are hinted to in the 10 commandments. And not only that, every letter of Torah contains, it says Rabbi Akiva would expound on the crowns and the little dots that are written on the end of the letters, and he would expound passages of halacha, all based on one word, one letter, one dot. And when you look at this, when you look at just seeing the Aseres Hadibros, you can't make all of that out necessarily. You look at it, it doesn't speak that to you, but we know that there is that meaning behind it. This is one of the things when we talk about the Aseres Hadibros, and there is a Gemara that says that the sages at one point in time wanted to institute the reading of the Aseres Hadibros in Shul, part of Shema. People should read Aseres Hadibros. You should read the 10 Commandments every day in Shul. In fact, in the Beit HaMikdash, as part of the service in the temple, they would read the 10 Commandments. That was one of the readings that was done in the temple every day. And the Talmud says we don't do that because of the minim, because of the heretics. There were heretics who said the 10 Commandments, that's important. 10 Commandments, they heard it from Hashem. The rest of the Torah, okay, come on, Shemitah, slaves, and my ox scores your ox. That's not so as important as 10 Commandments. So people thought that, and because of that, the sages said you can't read the 10 Commandments in Shul by itself. And this is there's a discussion. Actually, there's a custom which many shuls have that the people stand up for the reading of the 10 Commandments, and there is a big discussion among the poskim if this is even allowed, or is this showing too much unique respect to the 10 Commandments. The poskim generally say it's permitted. We only do it once a year. We're not doing this all the time. There are people who have a custom. They stand up for the whole aliyah instead of just standing up just for the 10 Commandments. They stand up for the whole aliyah, so it doesn't look so differently. But the idea of the 10 Commandments, it is important and it is something very special. But that's not the only part of the Torah that's special. The whole Torah is equally as significant to us as the Aseres Hadibros.
Did you say earlier that Moses did not convey all 10 at once?
So
earlier?
the process that happened as Hashem conveys the whole 10 Commandments in one utterance that nobody can understand.
Okay.
Then the Jews hear the first 2 commandments
Those
from
the 2 that stick, I guess.
I am Hashem, and you shall not have any idols beside any other gods before me.
It's like the mind is stuck back on those 2, even though Hashem continues.
And those 2, the Jews heard and understood those being explicitly said from Hashem. And on some level, I am Hashem is a positive commandment. You shall not have any gods before me is a negative commandment. And that those 2 really are the basis, the philosophical basis for the rest of the Torah. Do what Hashem tells you because I am Hashem. Don't do things that Hashem says you should not do, because that would be in some way like following idolatry, following some other. Hashem said not to eat this, pork, but I really want to. So that could be like in some way going after a foreign power and saying this this is even your inclination. I'm really hungry and that looks really good, or I really want to whatever how am I feeling during Shemitah or whatever it is that a person wants to do, that in some way is following a different power, a different authority than Hashem, and that this is like the basis of what the Torah is about, is understanding that I am Hashem and you shall not have any other power, no other authority besides Hashem, and that the Jews had to hear and understand directly from Hashem. There's a hint to this we find in the phrase Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Moshe commanded us the Torah. So the gematria, the numerical value of the word Torah is 611. And it means the Jews heard 611 mitzvot from Moshe, but 2 mitzvot they heard directly and understood and were able to relate to these 2 mitzvot, that I am Hashem, and the prohibition then again of having idols, of worshipping idols, is also those 2 they heard and understood and related to directly from Hashem. There are opinions that understand that in fact they understood all of the 10 commandments from Hashem directly, but generally I think most common explanations that they have heard and understood these 2 directly from Hashem, and the other ones, well, they heard them as part of this single utterance that contained all the 10 commandments. They couldn't understand those until Moshe breaks them down and starts to explain them. And you even see this within the commandments themselves.
Well, why couldn't they listen to the rest? Was it so when Hashem was explaining it? Was it so? So
the Talmud explains that the awesomeness of the experience of speaking and communicating directly to Hashem was so great that the soul left the body. The soul is a divine entity, and when it was confronted by the divine revelation of hearing and understanding these commandments, the soul didn't want anything to do with the body. The soul just left the body to come and be connected to Hashem. And in fact, the Talmud says that Hashem had to resurrect the people. All their souls they left their body. They said, we can't continue like this. We can't function without. And actually, if you look closely, and especially in the Hebrew, the first 2 commandments are written in the first person. The other commandments are written in the third person. So the first commandment says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am Hashem. The second one says, Ki Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Then you get to the third commandment is written in the third person. You shall not take the name of Hashem in vain. Again, you should not take my name in vain. You shall not take the name of Hashem in vain. And that's again now going to be Moshe personally relaying this message that the Jewish people heard from Hashem. So, as I said, again, the second commandment is a prohibition against idols. Don't worship idols.
So, for example, people who travel to China, to Thailand, and there is all kind of mass, not mass, what is called? The Buddha
Buddhism?
Not Buddhism, but they have those...
Like little statue?
Whatever it is.
Temples.
Yeah.
They're little,
so you should not be certainly not be involved in any sort of temples.
Are they allowed to visit those places?
Generally speaking, no. Generally speaking, Jewish people should not be visiting churches or temples or places of worship, that are not Jewish places of worship, not places of worship of Hashem. A person should not, be deriving benefit from idols. Should not be making statues, even to make statues that are not going to be worshipped as idols, but to have statues of the people, to have statues of the sun and the moon and idols, to have statues of things that are worshipped. A person should not have these things and should not.
So what do you do if you go to a Shiva house and the owners have these things around the house?
Little, Buddha dolls.
So this is hard. This is hard with a Shiva house, especially. This is actually one of the reasons why there's a custom in a Shiva house to cover mirrors. And one of the reasons for that is that really a person's not supposed to daven in front of a mirror.
Yeah.
and rebuild a shul or whatever, you're not supposed to daven in front of a mirror.
Sure, thank you.
Because you don't want to be looking like you're davening to the reflection of the person that you see inside the mirror. And because you're having davening in a Shiva house, and you have to see.
Well, because of vanity also.
Again, but you were supposed to be focusing on Hashem. That's why also some people sometimes in the Shiva house they'll cover pictures of people. Also, again, similar. There are reasons that they say they connect this to to ideas about the There are some customs, let's say in a Shiva house, to cover photographs of people. I don't think it's as widespread as the practice of covering mirrors, but it is something that's mentioned, and it's again for this similar idea that when people are going to be davening there, and
how about a picture of the deceased?
So again, you have to see, but certainly, facing where the davening is supposed to take place, there shouldn't be pictures of people. There shouldn't be mirrors. Sometimes you have to be, you have to try and be careful. Arrange where the davening is going to be taking place. That you're not going to be facing photographs of people, or sometimes you'll have even people making a house minyan or something. There really shouldn't be photographs of people, or certainly not statues or something. But someone once told me a story. This was a student in the yeshiva with Rav Moshe Feinstein. And the student told him, he said, he came up with a great idea about how he's going to, daven better. So he said, what's your idea? So the student told him, he said, I'm going to take a rock, I'm going to put this rock on my in front of my seat, and I'm going to, look at it and think about it, and I'm going to concentrate. And Rav Moshe said, okay, now you've made an idol. Let's destroy your rock. Okay, davening should be, to Hashem. Even if we're looking at
not to a rock.
Not to a rock.
Rabbi, what some people have in their house? I had a relative that had a mizrach.
So you have a sign, but you're not davening to the sign. Again, so when you have something, when a picture or whatever you have on your place you're facing in davening, should not be a picture of a person. Should not be a mirror. Should not be something that's going to look like a human image. There's even discussion a lot of times in shuls. They'll have an aron decorated with lions or with eagles or animals like this, and there's a big discussion about whether or not that's even permitted. There are various rationales to explain why this custom started. It's supposed to be similar to images of the Merkava, of the divine chariot. It's not really meant as an idol. Nobody intends it like that. But there are there's a lot of discussion about that. But even with that,
a lot of the old shuls, maybe not the newer ones, but the older ones
so
did.
one reason why a lot of that has fallen out in our practice is, there was opposition to it. There was rabbinic opposition to it.
Oh, really?
To this idea. There are
as opposed to just being old.
So I think kind of what ended up happening is there were rabbis who found ways to justify it and defend their practice, but as people are building a new shul and they ask the rabbi, what should we put in the shul? Why don't you find something different to put in the shul? This is a nice menorah. Let's do that. Right. So. The next one of the Ten Commandments is you shall not take the name of Hashem in vain. A person should not swear a false oath. A person should not swear an unnecessary oath. The Talmud says, even if a person is going to be fulfilling oath. This is verse 7.
Yeah, verse 7.
The third commandment, prohibition of vain oaths. And the Talmud tells us a vain oath could be certainly a false oath, or it could even be an oath that's completely unnecessary. A person says, I'm going to swear this table is made out of wood. Everybody knows it. You're going to take the name of Hashem and mention Hashem's name to swear on something that's completely obvious.
Swear to God.
You don't say such a thing, and even to mention the name of Hashem when it's not necessary is avoided.
The table jumped up at you.
So then I don't know what it is, and then you're getting into some sort of rational explanation of why someone would do that. Then you have also saying a bracha levatal, a bracha that's not necessary, also could be related to this to this idea. There are some Rishonim who say that actually saying a bracha levatala, an unnecessary blessing, would be a violation of this idea of not taking the name of Hashem in vain. The next commandment, Zachor et Yom HaShabbat l'kadsho, remember the Sabbath day to sanctify. Shabbos is, we all know about Shabbos. It's an important part of our religion. Keeping the 7 days, remembrance and testimony to the creation of the world. We are keeping a practice that goes back week after week, that goes back to the creation of the world and to this process of 6 days of work and rest on the 7th day. Famously, in the second repetition of the Ten Commandments, which is in Parshas Yisro, when Moshe repeats the commandments, he also says the word Shamor, to remember, not only to remember the Shabbos, but to keep the Shabbos, to safeguard the Shabbos, and of course our sages tell us that both of these words were said at the same time, in some way. Again, like we say, Zachor and Shamor. And like we said before, that the Ten Commandments are being said in a way that people can't hear them with all the words being said at once. And then Moshe explained it. So Moshe explained to them both the idea of Zachor and the idea of Shamor. And when the Torah was written, one explanation was put in the book of Devarim, in Deuteronomy, where Moshe is now repeating the Torah to the Jewish people and teaching them again. There's some explanations say that this was Moshe. We'll see later, after the sin of the golden calf, the tablets are broken. Moshe receives the tablets again. The second set of tablets might have had the second repetition of the Aseres Hadibros as explained by Moshe now for the second set of tablets. In other words, Hashem said the whole thing at once, which included both repetitions of the tablets, both repetitions of the Ten Commandments. Both the repetition that we have here in Exodus chapter 20 and the repetition we have in Deuteronomy chapter 5. Then Hashem told to Moshe, after the first two commandments, Hashem told to Moshe explanations of each commandment, which Moshe relayed to the people. Both the explanation that we find here in Exodus chapter 20 and the repetition that we have in Parshas Yisro and in Deuteronomy chapter 5 would have been told to Moshe at that time. One set would have been inscribed on the first tablets and one set on the second tablets. But they all come again from this initial statement of the Ten Commandments together by Hashem in a way that cannot be fully grasped and understood by it says what the mouth cannot speak and the ear cannot hear. We don't have the faculties to understand how they can be said at the same time, or to understand that you can hear two people saying I say Zach and you say Shomer, but you hear it from one mouth and one ear at the same time. It's not possible to grasp. But this is the idea of Shabbos. Zachor, to remember Shabbos, is understood as a reference to the positive commandments of Shabbos, to make Kiddush, to make Havdalah, to remember that it's Shabbos, to make a declaration, this is Shabbos. And Shamor is more of the idea of to safeguard Shabbos from violations of Shabbos, to ensure that all of the forbidden labors are not being performed on Shabbos. That's the idea of safeguarding Shabbos.
And that it's taught to our children. And that it's taught to our children.
Yeah, in both repetitions it mentions
through the mother.
Yes, but really through both parents. That it tells us about how that you and your son and your daughter and everyone in your household needs to read. And that gets into the fifth commandment then, which is of course honor your father and mother. And the Gemara tells us when the nations of the world, the whole existence, perceived the revelation at Har Sinai. It says all the birds were not chirping, the animals were not making noise, the angels were not singing. The whole world experienced this giving of the Torah. Because the nations actually went to Bilam and they asked him what is going on. They thought maybe there's going to be another flood. And Bilam said, no, Hashem is giving the Torah to the Jewish people. And they said, well, in that case, let them have it. We're happy with it. But it says that when they hear the commandments and they hear the first commandment, I am Hashem, and they said, okay, we get that. He's a king, he wants to. and no idols. Okay, that makes sense. Don't take my name in vain. Keep my day of rest. So, and then they hear the commandment to honor your father and mother, and that Hashem not only wants honor to be given to Himself, but also to other people, and that was a sign which the nations of the world recognized and respected as being. These commandments are not, a self-serving idea, but they're designed to bring out the best and proper way for people to behave. And the commentaries, the commentaries also talk about, that the idea of kibbud avim, of respecting a parent, is a rational idea. They put in a lot of work and they do a lot for a child, and the child has to should. You should do that, but even the fact they bothered to bring the child into existence, and that's not especially now with rise in things, abortions and things, it's not not a necessary reaction that the parents are going to even bother to give the child life, which is an important thing, and honoring the parents is of course contrasted with the commandment we have later in the Torah, which tells us to fear one's parents, to show respect for parents. That honoring a parent is more of the idea of doing things that they need, giving them food and drink, taking care of the parents, sort of as a reciprocation for things the parents, should have at least done for their children. But there's also the idea of showing respect for parents, not arguing with parents, not calling your parents by first name if they don't want to be called like that. Is it that? Afterlife also, the child has to show respect to parents. One of the things, for instance, of saying Kaddish for parents is an aspect of kibbud avim, is of showing respect, of not after the parents are alive, not denigrating the parents, or showing respect, and showing respect even by the way that the child lives his life. It should bring honor to the parents. And the Talmud says that the person's reaction upon meeting an upstanding member of society would be to think that his parents must have raised him right. And a reaction to seeing someone who does not live up to the way that a person should, whatever it is, a person will think, people will think, hey, their parent, must have been their upbringing. And that in and of itself is a sign of honor and respect to a parent. Oh.
Yeah.
So we talk now to the sixth commandment. The sixth commandment is lo tirtzach, thou shalt not murder. Kind of self-explanatory. Don't kill people. Not a good thing. And really, the next 5 commandments that we're going to have are all pretty simple ideas. You don't kill. Lo tinaf, don't commit adultery. Lo tignov, don't steal. Commentators say don't kidnap, specifically. And lo tanav achad, don't bear false witness. And the final commandment is lo tachmod, do not covet. You shouldn't covet your neighbor's house or his wife or his slaves or his animals. Don't covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. And these all seem to be the Talmud explains actually lo tachmod, don't covet means even if you're willing to pay him for something that he doesn't want to sell, forcing someone into buying, not into selling you something that he had no reason to sell, but you made him an offer he couldn't refuse. People think I paid him full price for it. That's the Talmud says this is not something that people is intuitive. People think I paid him, it should be okay, but even that is a violation of the prohibition against coveting. But the commentators raise the point that these commandments are all very simple, straightforward. Most countries have laws against killing and stealing and kidnapping. These are not revolutionary ideas. So why the Hashem reveals Himself to the Jewish people to give them the Torah, to tell them all these commands which are the basis of Judaism, and at least half of them are just these really simple, basic ideas. Even many of these are part of the laws that are given to Noach, the Jews knew these already. They've been practicing these. Why are these part of the Ten Commandments? One of the reasons behind this is to emphasize to the Jewish people that all law comes from Hashem. That we don't differentiate between an idea, there are theories about law that talk about there being natural laws. I don't need to have a religious instruction not to kill. Everyone knows not to kill. It's part of the social contract, or part of biological argument that people should behave a certain way. And part of that really is the difference. That when it's not related to a commandment that's given from Hashem, it really does become just an issue of should. Well, I really shouldn't steal, but in this case, I really would like this.
It doesn't carry as much weight.
It doesn't carry as much weight, and you can have loopholes, and you can have exceptions, and you can have ethicists who say, well, the person's really not productive anymore, so they should have the right to die, or something like that. They're not. You have first they talk about terminally ill people, and talk about just people. People are very depressed, and people don't have quality of life, and or something like that. You shouldn't steal, but it's really
who's looking.
Exactly. Exactly. Who's looking? It's just a little thing. It's not such a big deal. I really want it. He's not such a good guy anyway. You can come up with all sorts of rationalizations, but that really, the idea that all
defeats the purpose. The
laws, and even these what we call mishpatim, the civil, rational laws, every country has laws like this, but that we believe that these come from Hashem, and that carries weight, and that makes it an absolute. This isn't it's not a good idea to kill. It's not a good idea to commit adultery. But we really want to, and but these laws are not just part of a natural idea. These laws are something that comes from Hashem, and this becomes the basis. And then we go on actually to Parshas Mishpatim, which we begin to read at Mincha. We read next week, and it's all about this. Is still part of the first laws that Hashem is telling Moshe when he goes up to Mount Sinai for 40 days. All those civil laws about slaves, laws about when my ox scores your ox, and laws about if you leave some item in my guardianship and I lose it and I have to swear for it, whatever, all sorts of things, and lending with interest and not doing all types of civil laws, explaining all different types of seemingly very mundane ideas. You would have thought, talk about building a temple, or talk about kosher, or I don't know, something major thing. Instead, we're talking about civil laws, which are very rational. You look at it like you would think someone could have made this up. Someone could have said a slave should be like this, treated like this, or an animal like that. But we don't believe that. We believe that this does come from Hashem, and that it's important to know that all the aspects of civil law, all the aspects of the Torah is part of something that comes from Hashem.
Why would they have done it in that order?
With beginning with the civil laws?
Yeah, why not, like you just said, why not more important?
Because to emphasize this idea. To emphasize this idea that the civil, and also, conversely, to emphasize the point that the civil laws are important. Someone might think, I'm going to be a good Jew. I should be thinking about what time I daven, and my tefillin, and exactly what to do on Shabbos or not. And who cares about the civil laws? So I'll say he can steal from this guy, or whatever. It's his property. That's not what's important to me. I have to be focused on something else. And Hashem is telling us, no, these mishpatim. And the idea of the laws, the idea of the mishpatim is connected. At the end of this week's parsha, we talk about the building of the altar, and it connects that to mishpatim. And also there are other passages that specifically connect the idea of justice to the altar, with the idea being first as a physical, geographical point. The Sanhedrin was situated in the temple, near the altar. The Sanhedrin, which would be hearing cases on civil cases, criminal cases, all sorts of, mundane things, that's part of the temple service, and the idea that that's important like the temple service, and that's, that is not, another element. The Talmud tells us, it talks about the phrase "Ve'elai mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem." These mishpatim, these civil laws, need to be placed in front of the Jewish people, and the Talmud derives from there lifneihem v'lo lifnei goyim, before the Jewish people, not before non-Jews. The Jewish people, it says, if the Jewish people were to go on a civil case, obviously not talking about criminal law, complying with government laws, which we do. But when we're talking about a purely civil law, a civil case between two Jewish people, that should be judged based on Torah principles. And it is the Shulchan Aruch, Rambam described this, that it is an embarrassment to the Torah to say, I'm going to go and pursue a case in civil court without trying to pursue it first in Beis Din, to pursue it in front of a Jewish court, to follow Torah law. And the reason behind that is that when someone is saying, well, civil law doesn't really count, that part of the Torah doesn't really count, I'm going to, I want to get my money back for this guy, did this to me or that to me or whatever, I want to pursue that elsewhere, not in the Torah. And then what you're really doing is bifurcating the Torah and saying, I'm going to keep, some mitzvah. I like the ritual stuff. I like the Shabbos and kosher and davening and whatever. But when it comes to my day-to-day life, I don't want that to be done in the Jewish system. And it has to go through a Jewish system. There are cases when it is appropriate to go to the secular court. But always the starting place has to be Beit Din. Starting place has to be the Torah. And that's really what the beginning of the Torah that's taught us after the Aseres Hadibros starts off with this and makes this emphasis, because that really is an equally important part of the Torah.